Margaret Brennan is traveling with the president in Erzen, Germany. Margaret, what do we know about the role these extra 250 troops will have in Syria?
Well, Vlad, these extra 250 forces will be joining 50 commandos who are already on the ground advising and assisting local forces, Kurdish fighters and Arab fighters. What we know is that this new number, the White House insists, won't be in a combat position, but they will be in harm's way. They will be providing intelligence, logistical support, in an advisory capacity as the White House is increasingly focused on retaking Raqqa. That is the unofficial capital of the so-called Islamic State. And they're in a rush to get there before the Russian-backed Assad regime forces do, because they really want to establish control, push ISIS forces out, and really end the war for good in Syria.
So, Margaret, our European allies, as you know, have urged the United States to do more to stem the flow of refugees fleeing Syria. But the president's been reluctant up until this point. How do you think the president will respond going forward?
Well, one of the reasons the president made this announcement today while standing in Germany is because of that pressure from European allies. Germany alone, the country we're in right now, has accepted more than 1 million refugees in the past year. And there is just a flood, some would say a very concerning one, not only into this country, but throughout the continent. And so that's why there's been pressure in particular for a safe zone, some kind of protected no-fly zone to allow some of the civilians to continue living within Syria without having to flee for safety elsewhere. The president really drew a line yesterday saying, yes, I may be willing to put more boots on the ground to advise and assist, but I am not willing to commit the kind of ground forces that would be required to really effectively roll out this kind of safe zone, which would, he says, involve a very large number of ground troops as well as air support. So the president made this announcement to really sort of respond to some of this European pressure, but also say this is more or less as far as I'll go. It's also a decision by the president to really try to squeeze ISIS in these last few months he has in office.
Margaret, turning to the other big news of the day, President Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel both support a controversial transatlantic trade deal. What's the latest on those talks?
That transatlantic partnership, or TTIP as it's called, would create one of the largest free trade zones in the world. And the president has said this is good not only for the U.S. economy and exports, but it's also a real boost to all of Europe. Remember, this continent has been struggling with a lot of financial turmoil in the wake of that debt crisis. And they also have a lot of economic strain, in part due to some of these migrants who have come in here. So there's a need, the president has said, to be more open to trade, to consider this proposal, which he believes should be drafted and finalized by the end of the year. But he is unlikely to see it ratified. He says he won't see it ratified before he leaves office. But the president was standing beside Angela Merkel here, the chancellor, to say, look, this is good for everyone. Do not be afraid of globalization. Those protesters you saw come out to the street here in Germany, more than 30,000 this weekend, are opposed to this deal because they fear it will break down consumer protections and perhaps break down some of the environmental regulations and protections that exist. And the president really tried to quiet some of that criticism and give it a boost.
All right, Margaret Brennan traveling with the president in Germany today. Margaret, thank you. Our Charlie Rose will interview President Obama in Germany today. You can get a first look at that chat tonight on the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley. Then more tomorrow on CBS This Morning and on Charlie's PBS program. And, of course, right here on CBSN.